This case took a crazy turn for me last night, and before we get into it, I need to give you a little bit of backstory. If you've been watching for a while, you know now that Sinister has a researcher, a writer. I used to do all of this stuff on my own, and I mean, these are really intricate cases. I needed a bit of help. So we have a team that helps us put everything together, but I handpick all of these cases just for various reasons. And a couple weeks ago, I was interested in the Jemma Mitchell case. Now, I had heard about this case from maybe a podcast or a TV show or something, and I couldn't rack my brain around it because there's always a question of why did this happen? You guys know in Sinister, my goal is to figure out why did this happen in the first place. I don't like to do cases where it's like, ooh, this person was just scary. This was bad. They were born bad from the jump. No, I need to know what happened. And if you're like me, maybe you do too. So when I first started reading over this case, there's almost 30 pages of research and I'm halfway through and I cannot understand for the life of me, why did Jemma do this? I get all the way to the end, still puzzled. I absolutely do not understand why Jemma did this. It seems like one of those cases where the person is just born bad and they're very demented. And then the other day, I decided to look back into this. Now, my researcher aggregates a lot of information. They also include videos, articles, things like that I should be looking over to get the full breadth of the case. And then last night, I clicked on a video that made everything snap into place for me. I've been debating if when I present this story to you, do I give you this piece of information in the very beginning or do I put it at the end? Because honestly, it rings alarm bells for me. But I know a lot of you guys, you're here for true crime. You want nothing but the facts of the case. So I've decided that I'm going to add this little piece of information at the very, very, very end. And you can infer what you want from it. You can listen to my opinions on it, whatever. But I want you to know I'm going to stick to the research here. I'm going to tell you the story. But you're probably going to be just as puzzled as I was the first time I went through this case. And if you don't think that my theory makes sense, then you'll probably just believe Jemma Mitchell was born bad. First, we're going to throw to our sponsor because as you guys know, Sinister has a growing team behind it that helped me make all of this possible week over week. We're just going straight to the sponsor because once I get into this story, I'm getting into the story. Today's episode is brought to you by Squarespace. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know I'm a huge fan of Squarespace. I feel like an old woman who's realizing how much building websites has innovated and changed over the years. Squarespace has made building a website and following your passions so incredibly easy. You can get it done in minutes. When I'm going somewhere, using a new business, service, a restaurant, whatever, the first thing I do is check out their website. Half of the time, it's because I want to know what's on the menu, but I want to see what the business is about. If you're starting a new passion project or running a long-standing business, you need a website. And why not have something that looks good? If you're anything like me, I have no aesthetic awareness when it comes to building something from scratch. But with Squarespace, you don't have to do that. They have tons of pre-made designs that you can pick and pull, customize, change colors, anything you need to do, add in your own photos, and they make it so easy. If you don't want to write any blurbs on your website or writing makes you anxious, you can use the generative AI feature to add some little about me's or product descriptions to all the things that you need on your website. When I used Squarespace to build the website for Sinister, it was really cool because I got to pick a design that looked good to my eye, and then I was able to customize it with all those colors that you guys know from Sinister, like the lime green and the gray and all of that, and it felt like my brand while starting with a template from something else. Not to mention, I had everything done in under an hour. From buying the domain, making my account, to building the website, it was done just like that. And of course, it's because Squarespace makes it easy. You can head to squarespace.com/sinister and use my code for 10% off of their incredibly flexible payment plans and start your dream website today. Once again, that's squarespace.com/sinister to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or a domain using the code SINISTER. Life is difficult. So a lot of people will sometimes put their faith in some sort of higher power to get them through difficult times or just as a general support system in life. Like, whether you believe in it or not, this is a fabric of our culture, and a lot of people believe in it. Now, if you're a person of faith, you might have run into a situation where you feel like everything is going wrong And maybe you need to turn to something besides religion. When that happens, we might look at the people around us to help us pick up the pieces. And when people look around for a new support system, that's how we can meet people like Jemma Mitchell. She was a spiritual healer of sorts, and she was an osteopath. We'll get into that a little bit more, but basically she's somebody that was looking to help others through alternate forms of spiritual healing. Jemma, through her congregation, because she's also a woman of God, ends up meeting a woman named Mi Quinn Chong. She also goes by Deborah. And Deborah is a woman who was recently widowed and also suffering from schizophrenia. Now, she was medicated. However, schizophrenia is a very serious disorder. Not something I would personally immediately go to a spiritual healer for. Both of them are devout Christians, and they seem to be drawn to each other. There's a sense of comfort from both ends. And also, sometimes we want to be helped so badly, we need support. We'll lean into any source of comfort. And sometimes, when people are helping others, they're also helping themselves in the process. Jemma needs something that Deborah has, and Deborah has a lot of it. Jemma needs money. Jemma Mitchell was raised in Australia, and things were pretty normal from the beginning. She lived with her mom, her dad, her sister, but as you know, a lot of times in people's childhood, things fall apart. And Jemma's parents' marriage was really on the rocks. At the time, Jemma's mother worked for the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. So when her mom and dad split up, they decided to go to the UK. Jemma's mother, whose name is Hillary, by the way, she and her daughters to London. Now, not too much is known about Jemma's life between when she moved to London and when she got to college. It's a pretty big gray area between 1984 and 2004. But in 2004, this is about when Jemma gets to college. And this is where things get a little odd. She went to King's College London to get her human sciences degree. Pretty normal, right? If I met somebody with that degree, I wouldn't think much of it. Oh, that's cool. That's probably a really difficult course. Love that. Well, while she was working on that degree, she ended up taking a class called Structural Basis of Human Functioning, during which she learned how to dissect the human body. And not only did Jemma learn to dissect a human body in school, she was really good at it. Sometimes when people are really, really, really good at things just right off the bat, they have a real genuine passion or fascination with the subject. And Jemma was really, really good at dissecting human bodies. She was actually awarded the Hamilton Prize for Anatomical Excellence, and she graduated with first-class honors. When it came to the human body, Jemma was fully plugged in. From there, she went on to study osteopathy. Now, I was trying to fully understand what this was. I looked at a couple of different websites for people that practice. I read up on it, and it's kind of an interesting practice. So, on one hand, the majority of people that practice osteopathy are some form of licensed physician. But there are some people that are a little bit more of the holistic route. The concept of it is it's basically like a physician that tries to treat the overall health of the human body by working with the muscles, twisting, just doing a lot of body work. They're stretching, they're massaging, they're trying to get circulation going in certain places. Maybe you guys in the comments will know a little bit more about this practice, but it kind of seems like a combination of real science, but also a lot of holistic beliefs. One website that I found of a practicing physician, they were licensed, but also very, very holistic. And they said that they can treat stress and trauma. And the way that they treat it is by performing massages and a little bit of acupuncture and, a little bit of circulation work. And this is interesting because I do think that stuff works and it's very, very important. Acupuncture can really help relieve tension in the body where we carry stress. It kind of creates new pathways for things. Or, massages. Yeah, if I'm stressed, that's going to be phenomenal. But, I don't know if you can massage the trauma away. So they really, really like believe that they can treat this whole health thing with a combination of holisticism and science. It's a really interesting practice. Personally, I feel like it maybe should go hand in hand with some other things, but I think that a lot of people do experience relief from that. The big thing as it pertains to Jemma is that they believe the well-being of humans depends on your ligaments and your tissues and your connective tissues functioning together. Like, this practice continues that theme of Jemma being fascinated with the insides of the human body. So she got this degree. She was pretty passionate about it. And she moved to Australia, where she started her own practice. Now, this is actually a line from Jemma's website. It said that she was attuned to subjects in neuroanatomy, genetics, and the dissection of human cadavers. Supposedly, Jemma had a pretty decent career in Australia, but opening your own practice is very, very difficult. When doctors open their own practice, they have to understand team management, they have to understand scheduling, they have to understand marketing to get new patients. It's a lot more than just being a great doctor. She ultimately ended up returning to Britain and not filing to practice in the UK. In order to practice osteopathy in Britain, you have to register with like this licensed board. And for some reason, she came home, moved back in with her mom, who was also living with her sister at the time, and she didn't re-register. It's hard when you're dealing with everything that life throws at you to prioritize getting a good night's sleep. I mean, I've heard so many people talk before about how they have some kind of sleep routine or sleep hygiene or something. And I'm like, God, I'm just happy to get 6 hours. But what you need are 6 good hours, but ideally 8 or 9. And the best way to get a good night's sleep is to start with your sheets. 1, you want something that looks good. I mean, when you look at your bed, you want to say, oh my God, I can't wait to crawl into that. 2, you want something soft and comfortable. And 3, you want something that's going to regulate your temperature. I mean, I could keep going, but let me stop there for a second. Miracle Made makes temperature regulated bedding to help you sleep cool all night long. You don't want to be too hot. You don't want to be too cold. You want it to be just right. Have you ever had a really, really good night's sleep before at a hotel? It's not just the mattress. It's not just the hotel or the fact you're on vacation. I'm telling you, it's the bedding. Getting comfortable is one of the fastest ways to make sure that you get a good night's rest. Another thing that I love about Miracle Made is the sheets are antibacterial. I know some of you are a little depressed and you might need to wash your bed sheets more. You don't want to wake up with acne all over your face, and that's exactly what happens when we're not able to take care of that stuff on a regular basis. Listen, I'll cut you some slack. I know you're probably dealing with way too much right now, okay? Let Miracle Made take care of it for you. The sheets, antibacterial. They are able to prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. Now, I'm going to tell you my absolute favorite part about all of this. If you use my code, you can get 3 free towels. I'm supposed to like tell you where to go to use the code and all that and mention the towels. I have to say that first. You get 3 free towels. Bro, you can't beat that. But let me tell you where to go. Whether you're buying them for yourself or buying them for someone you know, you can go to trymiracle.com/sinister to try Miracle Sheets today. If you order now, there's always discounts going on the website. You might save up to 40%, but if you use my code, Sinister, you actually get an extra 20% off and the towels. The towels, okay? If I email them, will they send me the towels or do I have to go put in my own code? I need this 3-piece towel set. This is not a bit. Go to trymiracle.com/sinister. I'm going there too. Instead, she starts to fill her time with going to church. So just to give you a snapshot of Jemma's life right now, she's gone to college. She's gotten her degree with accolades. She's gone to Australia, worked at her own practice for about 7 years, and suddenly decided to go back to the UK, moved back in with her mom, where her sister is also living there, and they're like both in their 30s. And they're all just at the house. And also something else to point out, This was about a $4 or $5 million home. It was a very expensive, large property, but it was completely dilapidated. They were not keeping up with the property, but Jemma's mom, Hillary, did not want to get rid of it. And it's a $4 or $5 million house. I've seen different numbers about how much the home was worth, but I think it really depended on the condition, and they were not evaluating the home. But it was a huge home. So Jemma is back in her mother's home with her sister in her 30s, house is falling apart. Her mom was kind of a hoarder, so there was just stuff all over the place. And Jemma wasn't doing anything. So she starts going to church a lot. When you're living in a home like that and you don't really have a solution or an escape, and this goes for people when they're young, when they're like 15 or 16 and they have like a chaotic home life, you're always trying to get out of the house, right? Or hiding in your room, of course. But also when you get older and you have a car, you're like, I got to get out of here. So Jemma was always trying to go to church. I mean, Bible study, Sunday. Like, she felt good at the church. And while she was there, she ends up meeting Deborah, who I mentioned earlier. Deborah and Jemma got along very, very well and very quickly. It's like they understood each other. Deborah was originally from Malaysia, and she grew up very poor and ended up moving to the UK, going to college. And people said that she was a very opinionated person. She was very resolute with things. She was well-researched, well-read, and she had strong opinions about different things. Politics, culture. Like Deborah, she had conviction. But she mostly lived a quiet life. She lived on like a quiet residential street. She was married, lived with her husband. But she's a bit of an older lady, and ultimately her husband ended up passing, and she was in the home alone. And after her husband passed, Deborah kind of started to spiral. She had been with this guy her whole life, and now, she's always reading stuff online. She's always ingesting new information, but she's alone in this house and just kind of working and going to church. But something changes. Prince Charles from England was communicating with her. He was sending her telepathic messages through the computer on YouTube, actually. She would watch him and talk to him all the time, and she would write him letters. She would also send letters to Boris Johnson because she really believed that they were talking to her. Deborah had untreated schizophrenia for a lot of her life, and after her husband passed away, she completely spiraled. She really genuinely believed that she was in a relationship with Prince Charles. And look, this was not her fault. Her schizophrenia was coupled with extreme delusions. And when people caught wind of this, because she was talking about it so casually, like it was really happening, she ended up going to a psychiatrist. They diagnosed her and they put her on antipsychotic medications immediately. Schizophrenia is a very, very severe and scary disorder for the people that have it, for the people that are around them that don't know how to help and they see their loved ones suffering. But Deborah took the steps, got on her antipsychotic medication, actually took her antipsychotic medication, and, reinserted herself into society and still lived pretty quietly. But, she went to church. People said she was very kind, very, very generous, kind of keep to herself sometimes. But if you needed a place to stay, Deborah would let you sleep on her couch. Absolutely. How many days you need? Come on in, baby. Dinner's cooking. That's kind of what kind of person she was. Remember, a couple things about Deborah. One, she has very, very strong opinions, very strong convictions. So religion is a huge part of her life. She firmly believes in God, Christ, Jesus. She is a God-serving woman. And look, in this show, I talk a lot about bad Christians. I was raised in the church. I don't follow anymore, but I still have a lot of Christian morals, and I generally understand the church. The vibes I get are She was a good Christian, and I like that. I love me a good Christian. She came to church. She gave her tithes. She was respectful. She wasn't, hating on people in the church. She wasn't being unchristlike. Deborah did what God brought us all in the church to do, and she was minding her business. Now, the second thing to remember about Deborah is she is still a schizophrenic. And even though she's on her antipsychotic medication, there's still little glimmers of things that could be delusions, especially when somebody plays into that. And when she meets Jemma at the Emmanuel Church group, they really, really did believe it was fate, and they became close very fast. A lot of times, I think that when we have that instant connection with somebody, it might mean that this person has traits with another person that we have some unfinished business with. So I find it very interesting that Jemma connected so deeply with Deborah, who was strongly opinionated, a bit delusional given her condition, and liked to keep to herself. And Deborah may have felt connected to Jemma because Jemma presented as a caretaker and a professional. And Deborah was college educated. Maybe there was some crossover there. Maybe there was, strong potential for a friendship. But something connected them that was more than just, we have a few things in common. We say hi to each other every day. This felt like a spiritual connection to both of them, and they let other people know that. Now, into their friendship, Jemma starts to see what everybody else in the church has kind of seen for a while, which are Deborah's struggles with her mental health. They kind of come out in moments. Remember, Jemma is a practicing holistic osteopathic healer. She is firmly of the opinion that her craft works and she can heal most things. She believed that through stretching and pulling the ligaments and massaging and increasing circulation, that she could heal Deborah's schizophrenia. And the type of language that she used made Deborah also believe that she could heal her too. Now, the level of healing is unclear. Did she think that she was going to completely make Deborah's schizophrenia just go away? Maybe not. But I think that Jemma really believed that she could alleviate some of her symptoms. I also think because, Jemma had these special interests listed on her website, one of which was neuroanatomy. I think she was fascinated by Deborah. I think she wanted to prove her own healing abilities while also kind of studying Deborah. Now, I want to point out one other thing. Jemma is a very soft-spoken, pretty girl. I was looking at some photos of her from her time when she was going to church, and she's always got, like a dainty little kind of dress on. She sits very prim and proper. She looks inviting. She looks kind. Her voice is very soft. She's soft-spoken. This is something that would really lull somebody into a sense of security. I mean, imagine looking at somebody that looks so sweet and so innocent, and they're speaking kindly and softly to you while also telling you that they're going to heal you in a godly manner and that you guys are going to get through this together. After you've lost your husband, it's almost creepy how there was no way for Deborah not to fall into this spider web, essentially. While this friendship is growing, Jemma, back home, is having some problems. So remember I said she lives in that house with her mom and her sister. Old, rundown, expensive, multi-million-dollar house. They didn't keep up with it. Her mom, straight out of Hoarders, it's like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it's really broke, just don't look at it. I think they got to a point where there were some things in the house that were just absolutely unfixable. I don't have the exact details of what they were, but maybe this was a roof, maybe this was like a wall issue, a foundation, something like that. But they had to get it fixed to continue to live in the house. Reluctantly, her mother finally gets the work started on the house. And when the contractors are in there, there's some sort of dispute. Jemma and her mom claim that the contractors are scammers and they stole from her and blah, 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 blah. That could very well have happened, but also it may have been too big of a job that they undersold, or maybe the relationship was tarnished, but they did a portion of the repairs and then they abandoned the project. Jemma's mom had paid over $250,000 to have them work on the house. And for some reason, after a while, they said, you know what, we're out. And they left the house with basically no roof in some areas, scaffolding all over the place, construction. They were done. Now, it's interesting because the relationship between contractors and homeowners, it's a finicky one. Some of us have been on the end where we have to hire a contractor for something in the home, and then they just keep adding more money and more money and more money. It's like, wait, this isn't what we agreed on, and why is this done badly? And then on the other hand, I've also been in this scenario where I've dated a contractor and I've just heard the wars that go on that are not always the contractor's fault. So I'm very, very split on this one. I am not sure what happened, but at the end of the day, Jemma and Hillary, her mother, they were pissed. They said these guys were scammers. They had stolen all their money. And I mean, it's true. The job was not done. And they were left with a barely livable home. Around this time, Jemma also had another friend named Karen. And Karen would actually go over to Jemma's house sometimes because she had a boyfriend that lived in the area. And it was just like a cheap place to stay. She said that there were Bibles all over Jemma's house, like everywhere. And she said it almost seemed like the religious paraphernalia was growing anytime that she visited. Jemma was obsessed with God and the devil and Bibles. And she said that her mom and her sister were devil worshipers for not practicing. She would talk about this constantly, but she had met this friend in the church. So her friend is just kind of like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I love Jesus too. Like, I'm super down with that. But after everything happened and she did this interview, she reflected on it and was saying that it was excessive. It was a lot. This former friend went and actually did a couple of interviews with different outlets, which I totally understand, because when you're close with somebody that later turns out to be a decapitating murderer, it's traumatic. It's like, oh my God, could that have been me? How did I not see the signs? And so this lady was talking about a lot of things that she kind of ignored, but still were stuck in her brain. This particular instance was witnessed by 300 or so people at the church. Karen said, on this particular day, they called up people from the congregation in the church, called them up front. You know, if anyone needs to speak to God, if anyone needs to be healed, if anyone needs support and the love of Jesus, come forth. And Jemma, who's very soft-spoken, kind of quiet, she was going through a hard time at this point, and she kind of stopped showering. She looked a little disheveled. She was always wearing like super baggy clothes. She stood up and she went to the front of the church. And when the pastor asked her, you know, what brings you here? What ails you? Jemma said that she wished to be exorcised of her demons. She said she wanted to be exorcised of the demons from her childhood. She doesn't go into the specifics of what these are. But the pastor, he says, yes. And he put his hand on her head, and everyone saw this and said she started shaking. She started convulsing almost. And, you know, he continues. And when this is happening in the church, the pastor, they say, oh, this is working. God is talking to her. Let's keep going. And, you know, they're saying, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus. And this is amping her up, and it's going more and more. But Jemma starts screaming. She starts just letting out these blood-curdling screams. Her friend later said that it was like something out of a horror movie. And she just kept screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. This happens sometimes in the church, in a sense. It's like a release. It's a very spiritual release. If you've ever been to like a Pentecostal church or even regular churches, you've seen this before. But Jemma's situation was strange because she was screaming like she was in a horror movie, like her entire body was on fire. Her friend said she was completely freaked out. Other people in the crowd were shocked. And when you're in church, you let it happen because you think that God is speaking to this person, and you're like, well, if that's what's going on, let the pastor let it out. But it was really scary. And when Jemma was done screaming, she kind of readjusted herself and switched back into her voice. People said she had a really childlike voice, almost like a little kid. And she asked everyone in the congregation to please pray for her. Please heal her. Thank you so much. That is one of the weirdest things that I've heard in a case. Like, it makes sense, you know? But it's a pretty shocking detail. And if you've dove into the Jemma Mitchell case before, I feel like a lot of times it's just presented as, oh my God, she was just bad from the beginning. Like, something happened to this girl, but I'm still saving my little connecting piece that I was going to tell you guys for the end. This is just, interviews, things from people from the church, her friends, people that knew her. Yeah. The incident with the screaming in the church and then the going back to, okay, thank you, everyone. To me, it makes me feel like Jemma is somebody that bottles a lot of emotions up, and she's probably been bottling up a lot of things for her entire life. Now, I don't think that Deborah saw this particular incident, but she did know that Jemma was really, really going through it. And she expresses to Deborah how the contractors had stolen all of this money from she and her mother. Deborah was a very generous person. A very, very generous person. She gave lots of money to the church. She gave money to people in need. She was very well off and had almost $1 million and had no problem sharing it with anybody. So when Jemma's explaining this issue to her, Deborah says, well, I can help. I can help with that. What do you need? How much do you need? And she told her that she needed a couple $100,000 to get the job done. And Deborah actually tells her, I will give you $250,000 if you promise to make that big, beautiful home a place of worship. Based on the text messages, it kind of seems like Jemma was going to provide some osteopathic healing for Deborah and also turned the home into a place of worship or some sort of church or dedicate it to more Christian activities. And Deborah would be giving to her faith, which she believed in, and she would be receiving healing from Jemma. Some of the messages that Deborah sent her said things like, you're truly a person of God, your healing, your kindness, like it really speaks to me. And this is all great news. This is fantastic. The kingdom is saved. Until a couple days later, Deborah retracts her offer. Now, her retracting the offer is a very interesting detail that I really, really tried to dig into. I mean, maybe she spoke too soon and realized she didn't want to part ways with $250,000, or, maybe she just felt like something was off with Jemma. One documentary that I saw said that Deborah had actually come to the house and saw what state it was in, which I really couldn't confirm through any articles. It's very possible that before she put down $250,000, she needed to see the home. But there's also the detail that people had come to Jemma's house before, like her friend Karen. So because the congregation all talked and they were pretty tight-knit, I also wouldn't be surprised if somehow it got out that Deborah was going to give Jemma this money to fix her house. In the church, they'd be like, oh, holy holy day. Deborah's been such a good person. People talk in the congregation. Somebody might have told Deborah, like, dude, do not do it. That house is falling apart. That thing is a piece of shit. Keep your money, Deborah. And for whatever reason, Deborah decided to retract. And that was a good move because one, Deborah did not need to give her $250,000 to this lady that she barely knows, but is taking advantage of her. And two, that house was going to cost so much more than $250,000 to make it what she wanted it to be. The $250,000 would just get the roof put back on and maybe some pipes fixed because they waited to fix this house until it was getting to a state of being unlivable. Like the floors were still bad. There was hoarding things all over the place. It needed to be deep cleaned. It needed to be renovated. This was nowhere near a place that people should be coming into. And Deborah retracted her offer. This hit Jemma like a ton of bricks because she really genuinely felt like she had been scammed by these contractors. And now a person that she thought she trusted is also pulling the rug from under her, even though she wasn't entitled to that money anyways. And that was just crazy generous of Deborah. She felt wronged. She felt incredibly upset, even angry. And that's when she concocts a plan. And a couple days later, on June 10th, 2021, Deborah goes missing. A couple days before Deborah went missing, her neighbor, a lady named Hira Khan, said that she wasn't acting like herself. And y'all know, people at the church and then also people on her street, they knew that Deborah was schizophrenic. They knew that, sometimes she would be not okay. But this time was different. She was really kind of off to the point that people noticed without even talking to her. Then they don't see her anymore. She just kind of disappears. The last time they saw her was on June 11th, 2021. And after days of not seeing Deborah, these people saw Deborah all the time. And also, they care about her. If you lived near an older lady that was schizophrenic, widowed, very nice, Christian, sweet, wouldn't you care about her? She's like the sweet little baby of the neighborhood. And when we don't see her for 4 days, it's very concerning. Is she inside? Is she okay? Has she fallen? What has happened? So on June 15th, they end up getting the police involved. When the police start questioning the neighbors, they described her as quiet, reserved, but eccentric. And she had lived there for 20 years. Everybody knew Deborah. She did not go away on vacations. She didn't go anywhere. She's always outside of the house. Like they see her coming and going to church, work, whatever. This was very strange. And for 2 weeks, Deborah is gone and nobody can find her. Until June 27th, when they get a phone call from somebody on a vacation. A lady named Charlotte Rawlings was on vacation in a place called Salcombe in Devon. It's kind of like a coastal resort town. And she calls 911 and she says, very, very matter-of-factly, I think I found a body. And the 911 caller is like, sorry, what? Repeat that? And she's like, I think I found a body. And they say, oh, are they alive? And she said, no, this body looks like it has been here for a while. And this person is very much not alive. Finding a body in Salcombe was very, very shocking, especially the state that it was in. Charlotte said that it had been decomposing for quite a while and there was a smell coming from it, very, very strong odor. Think about the closest resort town or little beach getaway that, people in your hometown go away to. Finding a body there is crazy. So the police get on the scene. What they find is much more gruesome than they expected. The head had been decapitated from the body with the neck cut at a very strange angle. They found the head a couple feet away from the body, just discarded. out on the land. The police start to search the CCTV footage of everything in the area nearby, just looking for some clues. Deborah had been missing for almost 2 weeks now, and even though they didn't have anybody to ID the body, this was kind of a match, and they suspected it might be her. So they started to look for all of the CCTV footage in the area from Salcombe to where Deborah lived. And on June 11th, they see something very, very strange on the camera. They see who they now know is Jemma Mitchell, just a woman with a large blue suitcase, and she's headed over to Chaplin Road, which is very close to where Deborah lives. And she's just strolling with this suitcase at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then at 1:13 p.m., 5 hours later, that same lady is seen with that same blue suitcase, and this time the suitcase looks full. It is bulging out, okay? It's fully zipped up, but the suitcase is completely full. And same demeanor, just walking right by the CCTV footage with this suitcase. She ends up calling a taxi driver just a couple houses down from Deborah's, and she's grabbing her suitcase, trying to get in the car, and it's so heavy that the cab driver is like, oh, let me help you with that. And Jim is a little reluctant at first, but that's his job. That's what he does. He's insistent. He's like, please, let me help you with that. And he tries to lift it up, and he's like, oh my God, this is a heavy bag. What is in here? Jemma says, books, just books, a lot of books. He's not trying to ask questions. He, helps her lift it up, and they put it in the back of the car. Jemma gets in the car with the taxi driver, and he kind of tries to make small talk with her. He's a cab driver. That's what they do, right? But she just has this book. Remember, she's a book girl. Lots of books in the back. She's got a book with her, too. She just has this book kind of in front of her, and she's not really engaging with him, not really talking, and she's just reading this book. It's a quiet drive. And he would say later that, she wasn't acting strangely. She was quite calm, just seemed like she didn't want to talk. But he did also notice that there was a bandage around her hand while she was holding the book. Police are searching and searching, and they cannot find any more footage of Jemma after the 11th. But then something turns up on June 26th. And you're not going to believe this. She's en route to Salcombe in a Volvo. She had rented a Volvo, and she's headed to this little resort town. The way they end up seeing this is so strange. She's caught on camera stopping at a gas station or service station, and something was really weird about it. It was raining outside, and the windows were open, and she had the front car door open. One of the attendants said that the car was just really weird, and it had this musty smell. And look, why would somebody be sitting at a gas station with all of their windows down while it's raining, front door open, and the car smells? I don't know. You go figure. But now all eyes are on Jemma. So the police start to dig into their relationship, and they find everything that I've caught you up on so far. And on July 6th, 2021, they finally apprehend Jemma Mitchell. So there's actually a video of Jemma being arrested, and there's not too much you get from this, but a couple things I'll extract for you. One, you can actually still see the scaffolding and the repairs being done on the home when the police knock on the door. And then two, when Jenna comes up, you can hear her soft-spoken, almost like childlike voice, like, hello, what are you all doing here? Like, there's not even confusion. It's just strange.
Police!
Excuse me. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good. There's no answer. Sorry, what's your name?
Sorry, we were asleep.
I mean, the police are knocking at Jemma's door, and she says, hello, how are you? She tells them that, they're asleep in the home. They ask if anyone else is in there, and she says, oh, my mom's in here. And she's under a fucking arrest, okay? I cannot get over Deborah being the neighborhood baby. I know some of you guys, you would be, hi, Deborah, every fucking morning, okay? And Jemma's just sitting here acting like nothing happened. They bring Jemma in for questioning, and she's just in complete denial about everything. They question her about the CCTV footage where she has the doors open and the windows open. And they're like, why would somebody have that open while it's raining, Jemma? And she's just like, no comment. Yeah, it's because she had a body in the car that had been decomposing for like 12 days. She was driving around with all the windows down because she could still smell it. That's why. But she's just, no comment, no comment. They said, why were you going to this town? She was like, oh, I was just going to go visit family and have a little vacation. She's just, dude, her demeanor is so strange. She's like a creepy little kid, you know? The strange demeanor, the history of their relationship, the timeline, the literal security camera footage. I mean, we can't get any clearer here, folks. Really just seals the deal for me, but it gets a little bit worse. You're not going to believe what they find in Jemma's home. You are going to believe it. They found a forged will from Deborah, quote unquote Deborah, written by Jemma. Like, I'm not even doing any story building notes. Jemma wrote it. She made a fake will of Deborah's after she killed her. It says that Jemma would get 95% of the deceased estate to be applied to the benefit of Miss Mitchell's home address projects. And the other 5% of Deborah's money would go to Jemma's mother. That's what she wrote. And Deborah had somewhere in the ballpark of $700,000 to $1 million or so. Why would Deborah leave Hillary 5%? Hillary, Jemma's mom. Why would she leave her 5%? Like, really, riddle me this. I can't believe that. Wait till I get to the end of this. Sorry. I've been trying to stick to the paper the whole time here, folks, okay? I want to insert these probable motives because I think that they're very feasible, and then I'm going to tack on mine at the end here, but while we're here, I'm going to drop this one in. Our writer was trying to figure out, and she said, perhaps she was spiraling, trying to keep her home because she didn't want to relive the separation between her mother and her father, Leaving a core home can definitely do that. Maybe she felt like a failure because she wasn't working and just wanted to get back on her feet using Deborah's money. Or maybe she was just a bad person and saw Deborah was mentally ill and vulnerable and was like, this doesn't matter, like almost dehumanizing her because of her disorder and just, I'm going to take from them. I could use it more. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I definitely love to see the comments of what you guys think it could be. Now, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, thanks for listening. And I'm curious what you guys think. But if you're on YouTube and you can leave a comment, you don't have to do it now. You can wait till the last little theory at the end here. But some of you guys, sometimes I know when I'm telling these stories, you're like, I know what that is. And if I haven't been through it, I probably won't recognize it. So always love to hear what you have to say. Now, to make things worse, and I know, how does it get worse past the will? They start to look more at the text message they were sending. So after they find the will, like, we need to know more about this relationship. They looked at the text messages back to about June 8th when everything kind of started spiraling out. Deborah told Jemma, until you sold the house, I don't want you to come to me or my house. I'm stressed to the core. I feel like maybe Jemma was scaring her, putting some kind of stress on her. Deborah had told her, you know what? I'm not going to give you the money, and really, you should just sell the house and enjoy the profits. And I mean, she was right. That thing, they probably could have sold it for at least $2 or $3 million, but it was so weird. They wouldn't sell the house. Their attachment was to the house. So Deborah was very clearly stressed specifically about Jemma, and it's unclear whether Jemma was bothering her, making her feel really uncomfortable, straight up stalking her or something. But Deborah started to set very firm boundaries. And this is a far cry from the relationship that people witnessed at the church. Something had happened here. The bottom line of this, though, is that Jemma needed money and Deborah had money. This is a strong enough motive for them to arrest her and also prove it in court. Everything else is just a bonus. I mean, they have the CCTV footage. If they don't convict this lady, but the last thing that they have to do is really piece together what happened. Here's what the police think happened. Jemma arrived at Deborah's house somewhere around 8 or 9 in the morning, and She knocked Deborah over the head with a blunt object. She fractured her skull and at some point used her knowledge from school to decapitate Deborah. She had done this not in just like an angry way. She had done it in a almost scientific way. Like she was fascinated with it, or like, I know how to do this. There was something Jemma was getting out of doing it this way. And not only that, Jemma broke all of her ribs. She broke all of Deborah's ribs so that she could stuff her into the suitcase. The weapon was never found, and Deborah's DNA was found on a towel that was stuffed in the side of the suitcase, and then everything else we saw on the CCTV footage. She actually took the suitcase back to her neighborhood and put it in a neighbor's garden until it got to the point where she had to dispose of it and take it somewhere else. I think that the fact that Jemma did something so horrible and then put it in the back garden and just kind of shut it off in her mind kind of speaks to her character, that she's able to bottle up things and just disassociate and like, I don't see that. That didn't happen, until it gets to a point where she has to deal with it. After all of this, Jemma was finally charged with murder on July 9th, 2021. The trial was a fiasco. I mean, this was a sweet, quiet, kind lady that was being charged with murder that involved decapitation. Also, it was a televised trial. Of course, the defense team has to come up with some raggedy excuse. The defense tried to paint a picture that Jemma didn't need the money because her house was worth so much money. They said, Jemma's house is worth $5 million. She didn't need money. Why would she do this? And they tried to eradicate the motive. But it was so obvious that she needed the money to fix the house. I mean, the jury wasn't stupid. That was information that they could let into the trial. But throughout the entire trial, there were so many details that were damning for Jemma. You know, a radiologist came in and said that, oh, she absolutely could have fit her into that suitcase. And Deborah's sister, a lady named Amy Chong, she testified how she couldn't even have a proper funeral for her sister because she had been decapitated. Oh my God. Through all of this, Jemma showed no emotion. She was just calm. At the sentencing, the judge came down and said that she showed no remorse and extreme denial. The judge was shocked at her complete lack of humanity, from defiling the body afterwards to taking advantage of a vulnerable person like Deborah. He actually said to her, "The enormity of your crime is profoundly shocking. Even more so given your apparent religious devotion and the fact that Deborah Chong was a good friend to you and had shown you great kindness." And on October 22nd, 2022, Jemma Mitchell was given life in prison with a minimum of 34 years to serve. I don't think Jemma is getting out, though. And also, I bet the people in jail are scared of her. I would be scared of her. Just, oh, hello. Like, you can get away with that in church, but in jail, I don't trust you. Okay, the thing that I have been waiting to say this entire time, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this. And then also, once again, asking people in the YouTube comments, sorry, my audio listeners, but please let me know if I have like little hunches like this. Do you prefer them to be at the beginning of the episode so that you kind of walk through this with me on the same path? Or do you prefer that the really like strong opinions or assumptions kind of stay at the end of the episode? Let me know, but I just couldn't put this episode out without putting out a few things that I noticed. Let me show you the clip that changed everything for me. This is a video of Jemma's mom, Hillary, speaking to 60 Minutes about her daughter's crime.
In the eyes of the law, your daughter is a murderer.
Yeah, I know.
Do you believe she's a killer?
No. Definitely not.
This clip sent off alarm bells for me.
There is just no two ways about it. Jemma is innocent.
The complete denial of what we know to be true despite overwhelming evidence. I mean, it's not often that you catch the killer on camera in possession of the body. Remember, the towel that had Deborah's blood on it was found stuffed in the side of the suitcase later. She was in there, and that was used to transport her. But this is the demeanor of her mother. That didn't happen. No way. Not at all. Can you imagine what it was like growing up with this woman in her youth? And as a reminder, we are in BOZE conspiracy land, BOZE assumption world here. But I gotta say, man, you know, as a member of Mommy Issues Nation, and also I got daddy issues, I got mommy issues, I got family issues, I got issues, man. I can smell mommy issues from a mile away. That type of behavior, based on the evidence against her daughter's crime, is ding, 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 ding. Probably this lady is delusional to think that that didn't happen. She is a denier. She doesn't believe anything that she doesn't like. So thinking back to when Jemma was screaming in the church about her childhood demons and screaming, letting out all the pain, all the anger, and all the rage, there may have been something really, really bad that happened in Jemma's childhood. But when you combine that with a mother that denies your feelings and denies reality to live in a reality that's more comfortable for her, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So Hillary's full interview is on 60 Minutes. But if you look it up online, there are dozens of articles where Hillary is saying, she didn't do it, this is all a lie. I mean, the lengths that she goes to defend her daughter are disturbing. Some quotes that she actually said outside of the courtroom are, "There's absolutely no question about it, and I know she would not do such a thing. I'm absolutely baffled." Quote, "As far as I'm concerned, she did not do it. She's innocent." Another one, "I'm absolutely agog. There was no DNA on the body." What? She also said, "If she had murdered the lady at our house, there would be blood and other things, but there was nothing." So that's a little bit that I picked up on Hillary's character. But here are my mommy red flags. When Jemma came into the courtroom, the reporters said that she's with the guards. She comes in and she says, "Hello, mommy," and starts blowing kisses at her mom, and her mom is blowing kisses back in the courtroom for a murder trial. This implies a very strange bond to me. Jemma, also in her 30s, was living at home with her mother and her sister. Mom was not encouraging the girls to go out and find love, find success. I mean, Jemma didn't even take a job when she got back home. She was fully dependent on her mother, and it's very possible that her mom encouraged that. Both of the daughters were living at home. Both of the daughters had nothing but mommy. Also, incredibly strange that Jemma left all of Deborah's money in the fake will to fix up the home. Are we trying to make mommy happy because that's what mommy wants? And then also 5% to mommy. Like, what is that? What is that? Personally, I don't think that Jemma had an attachment to the home. I think that hoarder mom had an attachment to the home. I think she was just so upset that they were losing the house. It wasn't going away, but the quality was making it almost unlivable. It was probably at risk of being condemned. And her mother had been ignoring this for so long because it makes her uncomfortable and she doesn't want to deal with it. And it was causing her a lot of stress. And so Jemma has to make mommy happy. This is how like parents like this can be. They make all of their problems everyone else's, and the only way the child can find safety is by making that parent happy. And so Jemma is like, "Mommy, I'm gonna get the money. Mom, I got it." I have to stop saying mommy. It's making me uncomfortable, but that's the vibe. Like, she's like a little kid, you know? She probably announced very excitedly to her mother that she had gotten the money. She had gotten $250,000. And days later, she had to go back to her mom and say that she had revoked it. There's a chance that maybe she didn't even tell her mom that she revoked the offer. She was just enraged because this was affecting the deepest connection or bond that she had, which was, I'm so sorry, I have to say it again. Mommy, please love me. Mommy, am I good enough? take it as you will. That's why I also put it at the end of this video. Maybe this makes sense for some people, but also if you've lived it, you 100% probably say, okay, I can see a world where that happens. Another thing is, I think that rage in children and adults, it can be caused by a lot of different things, but it can definitely be caused by minimization of pain and emotions, or denial of pain and emotions, especially when a child is going through something, especially if something really, really bad happened to Jemma and her mom was like, that didn't happen because that makes me uncomfortable, and now you have to deal with that. Yeah, it can really do something to kids. Now, personally, I don't have the details of what demons she experienced in her childhood, like she said earlier. So to me, Jemma really just kind of comes off as a creepy kid, and she also really liked digging around in human cadavers to the point that she murdered somebody. Jemma had a lot of problems, and the church and osteopathy was not fixing any of it. Her crime was gruesome. It was horrific, honestly. And it's very disturbing, like the judge said, how she was able to just take advantage of such a vulnerable person for her own benefit with no remorse. No remorse in the cab. No remorse in the courtroom. Probably no remorse to this day. I added this part in at the end because I wanted to try to connect the dots for you guys and maybe help you see what I saw, because the point of Sinister for me is I want to know why they did it. But for Jemma, no matter what happened to her when she was a kid, that was not her fault. But when she got older and started noticing all of these signs, the rage, the tending too much to her parents, not expanding her life, not going after passions, her career, pursuing a relationship, whatever it may be, that was a big red flag that she needed to take full responsibility for.